Welcome back to the channel, you Kurd nerds. Today, we're going to be doing yet another private pilot mock check ride. And this one's going to be a little unique because it's going to be based on the Pipestrel Alpha Trainer, which is an LSA or a light sport aircraft with a ballistic parachute rescue system, or a BRS. The only other aircraft I can think of off the top of my head that has a BRS would be a Cirrus, or I guess technically the Icon A5 has a BRS. It's a parachute for the airplane. So we're going to make sure to dig into that. And it's got a pretty unique engine that's not really used in most training aircraft. So we're going to have a lot of questions about that engine. Without further ado, let's get into it. Are you okay with this being recorded for a later date to be used on other platforms like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and, or other social media is not included in this list?
Yeah, that's fine.
Awesome. So right off the bat, let's get into some aircraft systems. I really like to this immediately go into like V speeds and emergencies, because if you ain't got your V speeds and emergencies down, we might as well wrap this up. Call it good on both ends. But before we get into any of that, same thing that any DPE is going to do. They're going to ask for your logbook, your medical certificate, your pilot certificate, and a government-issued photo ID. It's not just a government-issued ID. Technically, your Social Security card is a government-issued ID. But how do I know that this Social Security card matches this pilot certificate, given that none of them have a picture on them, and there's no way to really connect a social to a pilot certificate, especially since we don't use socials for pilot certificate numbers anymore, right?
Right.
So we've got three outcomes, right? Satisfactory, unsatisfactory, and incomplete. Satisfactory, you're consistently within the standards. Doesn't necessarily mean you don't fall outside the standards periodically, but as long as you recognize that you have fallen out of the standards and trend towards making a correction and making an appropriate and prompt correction. And then we've got unsatisfactory, consistently with the outside of the standards. The examiner has to take control of the aircraft for a safety related concern. You failing on some level of a some knowledge subject, right? Whether it be systems, weather, reading a chart, etc. And then there's incomplete. Incomplete, if you look at 6143 Echo, it says that an examiner or the applicant may discontinue a check ride at any time if obviously you failed one of the components or maneuvers. You can just be like, all right, well, I failed. I don't really want to continue. But the only other three things that you could discontinue a check ride for that wouldn't result in a failure would be weather, aircraft airworthiness, or something else related to the safety of flight, right? Things that relate to the safety of flight could be, outside of your personal minimums when it comes to weather. I've heard of some people failing stage checks or failing check rides because the DPE is like, it's only a 15 knot crosswind. That's not a limitation on the aircraft, right? Well, and then they end up not getting the landing well. And here's the thing, if you can explain how that's outside of your personal minimums, how that would be, that would impact the safety of a flight, and you would never take an aircraft where you would be behaving as PIC in these conditions, now, obviously, if it's like wind calm or 2 knot crosswind and you say that, the DPE is going to go, all right, come on. Like,
Yeah.
what are we doing here? All right.
Right. Like, why are you at a check ride if you can't land in no wind?
Exactly.
Like,
and that's the joke that a lot of people crack. So, and so those are really the only reasons that you can incomplete. You not feeling well is another good one. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it took me 2 months to schedule this check ride. Well, I mean, if you're gonna shit yourself, do you really want to go fly? Right.
right.
So just keep all that in mind. There are things that the student can stop, or the applicant can stop a check ride for, that wouldn't result in an immediate failure. Okay. Any questions on those three?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
All right, let's get into some V speeds. What is the speed in which you would never exceed?
In my airplane, it's VNE and it's 130 knots.
130. Awesome. Now, if you are operating in smooth air, what speed could you go up to?
So that would be VA. Well, I could go to the top of the yellow arc.
Which would be?
Trying to think of that off the top of my head. VA
Well,
is
let's slow down real quick. You just gave me the red line on your airspeed indicator.
no. Well, actually, you're right. So it would be 129.
Awesome, awesome. Now let's say it gets
129.
bumpy. Let's say it gets bumpy. What do I have to slow down to?
That would be the top of the green arc,
Which is
which is our smooth air cruising. Well, it's our I guess all conditions cruising arc, um, which would be 104 knots or less.
yeah. I believe the book called it VO. Your
I think it
POH.
does.
Yeah, your POH called
Weird.
it VO, which that threw me off while I was reading through it, right? So let's say we just took off. We're just trying to climb at our best time, right? It's hot on the ground and we're trying to get up to that nice cool cruising altitude. What speed would I maintain to get up there in the least amount of time?
On the least amount of time, that'd be VY, which
Awesome.
is 76 knots. My aircraft.
Awesome. So we just took off. We took off inside of a valley. There's some cumulus granite out in front of us, but we need to clear that. What speed am I going to maintain to clear that cumulus granite?
I want to be at VX, which
Okay.
is 58.
All right. So what if you were coming in for a landing in landing configuration, right? What would if you maintained no G loading on the aircraft, right? So no bank or anything like that. What airspeed would you expect to stall at?
I have full flaps, correct? Yeah, because I'm in a landing configuration. That'd be 42 knots.
Awesome. Now, what about does yours have air brakes?
It does.
Okay. Well, what's the max speed at which you could that is a weird I might have to dig that one up. I might have to dig into the POH on that one because that doesn't make sense to me. Air brakes should be available at all speeds. But what do you
70
think
knots.
it is? That is it. You can't bring them out greater than 70 knots. I read that in the book and I wasn't sure if it was correct, so I wanted to ask you on that one.
Yeah, it's correct. There's actually a supplement too that comes with the manual, and it says 70 knots as well.
What's the point of speed brakes if you can't pull them out? You got to slow down to slow down, man.
Oh yeah. It's like,
That's
oh, I'm high. Now I got to pitch up and get higher before I can drop. Unless I want to slip, but
that is weird. That is weird. All right. So, um let's talk about a little bit of emergencies, right? So you had an engine fire on start. You went to start this airplane. There's a fire out there. What are you going to do?
well, engine fire on start. I'm going to turn off my fuel valve, turn off my fuel pump. I'm going to throw the throttle to full, and I'm going to crank the starter.
All right. Now, what do you do if the fire goes out?
If the fire goes out, I shut down and I get out of the airplane.
Okay.
But
No, I mean that's yeah, you get out of the airplane, inspect for damage, right? Now let's say the fire doesn't go out. What's the next step?
fire does not go out. I would. I already have my throttle at full because I tried to snuff it out like that and crank the ignition to suck it back in. If
That
it's not
didn't solve
going
your
out,
problem.
then I'm just gonna get out of the airplane. There's really not anything I can do at that point.
So, if you read through the actual POH, it's written just like this. Your engine fire on start, you're going to roll through it. If fire goes out, ignition off, master off. What do you do if the fire doesn't go out? You're going to perform the emergency shutdown, which is going to be throttle idle, ignition off, fuel valve closed, master off, fuel boost pump, verify off. Okay.
Gotcha.
So, sure, if you are about to burn alive, no, don't deal with any of this, right? But if the engine's on fire, this is something you should probably know because you shouldn't be trying to grab a checklist while you're trying to deal with a fire, right?
For sure.
Because checklists are flammable.
Indeed. So was my iPad.
Yeah. So, these kind of things, like things that deal with fires, um, they should be memory items, right? I didn't see anything like specifically calling out memory items or like immediate action checklists in the POH. So I'm not like, I wouldn't call it a failing moment given that there's nothing like documented as it, but it is kind of a safety thing.
I
Obviously,
should
if
know
your
that.
airplane's on fire and you don't know what to do, get the hell out of it. But you know, I'd rather have my cowling be melted and, need a new magneto harness than an entirely new airplane because I didn't know how to do what to do if the fire didn't go out, right?
For sure.
So, next emergency, next emergency. Uh, what are you going to do if you have to pull the BRS?
If I have to pull the BRS, well, I want to slow down, throttle to idle, and I want to slow down to really as slow as I can. So I'm going to pitch up. Um, and then once I've reached that slowest speed, I'm going to pull the BRS forward and slightly downward as hard as I can
Okay.
and deploy the parachute.
So, again, straight from the POH. Speed min as possible, ignition off, activation handle pull, smooth and firm. It is not a yank motion. It is a consistently smooth and firm pull. It does say straight up in there that yanking on it will dramatically increase the force required to release the BRS.
I got to
So
brush up on that one.
yeah, and again, it's a unique item to this aircraft and some Cirruses. So that's really why I wanted to bring it up because when you're going into a new airplane, you're going to get your private pilot certificate. It means you can go fly whatever the hell you damn well please as long as it's under 200 horsepower, doesn't have retractable gear and flaps, and you know, as long as it's not a complex aircraft, not a high performance aircraft, not a tailwheel, you can go fly whatever you damn well please, right? Um,
Right.
so you should be able to read through a POH and make sure that you are qualified to operate or you understand how all of its emergency equipment works, right? Because
Yes.
the last thing you want to do is be over here yanking on that BRS and the wing snapped off, but you're not strong enough to overcome that extra force that you are inputting into it, right? So when you do pull that BRS, what's the max G load that you would expect to experience once that parachute actually opens?
Oh goodness. What is it? It's two G's, right?
You wouldn't
Two
experience any
G's.
more than four.
No more than four.
No more than four. And the reason I really bring that up is because I went and did some aerobatic stuff, and at 4.4, I got sleepy.
Oh, okay.
All right. It's
So
not much more than the max you would expect from a BRS pull.
a lot of G's.
Yeah, it's a lot of G. And I mean, I'm also like weak. So, you know, I've got buddies, Sabrina on Instagram and TikTok. She went and flew an extra 300, and she pulled 6.5 and came back and was like, "This was awesome. Where's my beer?" No, I'm kidding. So everyone experiences G's differently, but knowing what to expect, especially in that emergency situation, imagine needing to pull a BRS and then cracking your skull open on the dash because you weren't prepared for those 4 G's.
That'd be bad.
Yep,
Also why we tighten our seatbelts.
exactly. So continuing on in systems, tell me about the engine that's in this thing.
Okay. It is a Rotax 912 UL. It has 80 horsepower. It's a four-stroke, four-cylinder, um, dual carbureted, so there's a carburetor for each cylinder bank. Um, Engine, it is horizontally opposed. Uh, it has ram air cooling for the cylinder heads, and the cylinders themselves are liquid cooled with water. And the oil system in it is a dry sump system, meaning there's two two oil pumps as opposed to an oil pan and one pump.
Okay. Now you said yep, it's liquid for all of that. It's all got an oil cooler, air cooler. Now, I'd say dry sump. I wouldn't necessarily bring up the whole two oil pumps because I mean, do you understand what a dry sump is, or a dry oil sump, or a dry oil system is, or what did you call it? Was it dry sump?
Yeah, dry sump. Honestly, that's the extent of my knowledge on a dry sump. It's that
So,
it has two pumps as opposed to one normally.
so a wet sump oil system, right? It has a pan down at the bottom that's actually filled with that oil, right? And then it has a pickup tube. But if that oil isn't near that pickup tube, it can't pick it up. You won't get oil into the engine, right?
Okay,
So a dry sump means that the oil in that system is always pressurized. There is no way to starve the engine of oil. There is no unpressurized system other than possibly like a catch can, and that might be where you're actually testing the or where you're actually checking the oil quantity, but nowhere in the loop of where the engine gets oil from and then puts it back is there going to be a lack of pressure.
gotcha.
So it's they're pretty cool. Like a lot of Corvettes have them because they have, or a lot of Corvettes and like even like drift cars have them because obviously the G loading where they're sliding back and forth can slosh the oil around and pull it away from the pickup tube. It kind of makes you wonder
Interesting.
why most airplanes don't have them, but yeah, they don't. Um,
Right.
all right, so you said water for the coolant system. You put water in that thing?
I mean, I don't, but
Okay.
I think it's in there.
So is
I'm
it
not really an engine guy. I'm not the best with motors, but I know the POH does reference a water cooling,
so
or
it
rather
ref
liquid cooling, I
yeah,
should
it
say.
references a liquid cooling, which is a 50-50 coolant mix. It's the same kind of antifreeze you can get at AutoZone. You're not going to put water in it, though. The bearings and everything that's in those water pumps need coolant. And also, if you start flying this thing around in temperatures below freezing, water's going to freeze.
No, you're right. That was dumb.
All right.
That
So,
was yeah.
yeah. So I would just say engine a little weak. Just make sure you dig into that POH because all the information I've got is directly pulled out of the POH. All right. And the DPE, if they don't recognize an aircraft, if it's been a really long time since they've done a check ride in that aircraft, they'll literally grab the POH and like flip through it and ask you a question out of it.
Okay.
All right, that's how the DPE did my wife's check ride in our seaplane. He has flown the seaplane in the 80s, so like technically he was qualified to do a check ride in it, but like that was 40 years ago.
Right. It's been a little while.
All right. So, in the way of limitations for this engine, right? So, we talked about we have a coolant limitation. It actually needs coolant, not water, a 50-50 mix. What about, is there an RPM limitation?
Yes. 5800 is the max, and you cannot run it higher than 5500 for more than 5 minutes.
Okay. So, 5,500 is the max continuous RPM. Awesome. Awesome. Let's get into, did you have any systems related questions that you were struggling with? Like, do you understand how magnetos, they generate their own power? I believe this one's going to have a distribution system and a FADEC, doesn't it? Or no?
I'm not certain on that, and I was actually talking to because the POH is kind of weak on
Yeah.
like descriptions with that. So I was setting up something with my school's like mechanical guy before the check ride to kind of go over go over it with him, but we haven't done that yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite certain, but I mean a magneto in general is a relatively simple system, and it says they're magneto-like.
Yeah.
Um, it's just an electromagnet essentially that kind of spins on itself, creates a spark, or rather, it creates a current that ignites the spark plugs. And since it's a dual magneto, that means there's two spark plugs in each cylinder, one being powered off of each magneto. So that way we have redundancy.
Okay. It's not an electromagnet. Magnetos aren't electromagnet. They are rare. They are permanent magnets. That's why they can stay running even if you have a complete electrical failure. It's because they're not electromagnets.
Okay.
All
I
right.
was always under the impression they were electromagnets. In fact, I think
No,
my old CFI might have told me that.
no,
Um,
they can't. So let's think about the system, right? So we understand in most general aviation airplanes, we have magnetos. If I kill every ounce of electrical power in that airplane, I turn the master and the alternators off. Does the engine shut down?
No,
Okay, so where would that electricity be coming from then?
it's coming from the magneto.
The magneto is not an electromagnet, it's a permanent magnet. Um,
Yeah.
does that make sense? And those things
Yep.
generate a lot of voltage. It's if you stick them on a drill and you take the leads and stick it on somebody's chair, they'll fall off. I don't recommend it. Uh,
Have you tried it?
yeah, when I learned so before I was a pilot, I learned how to build race cars, and we had a magneto for a top fuel dragster. And we thought it would be funny, and the guy pissed himself.
Oh shit.
So yeah, I recommend against it. It sounds funny. It sounds like a funny thing to do. It's not. Okay. So yeah, magnetos, they generate their own power. It's permanent magnets in there. Well, tell me, you said it was a 4-stroke engine. What are those 4 strokes?
So that would be, I mean, the easy way is suck, squeeze, bang, blow, but it's, um, you know, intake, compression, ignition, and exhaust.
Awesome. I wouldn't see anybody going any more into depth into that, right? What gas can you use in this thing?
So I can use either 100 low lead with an additive, um, or I can use MoGas.
Awesome. 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 All right, let's get into airworthiness. What documents do you need in an aircraft?
Well, that's my good old Aero acronym. And you're talking about for the aircraft, not the pilot, correct?
Yep, for that airworthiness, aircraft airworthiness.
So that's going to be my airworthiness certificate. It's going to be my registration. You can add that extra R for radio telephone operator if you're going to be flying outside the United States. I need the operating limitations, which is my POH, and the airplane's weight and balance.
Awesome, awesome. So, what would cause an airworthiness certificate to be invalid?
If the aircraft becomes unairworthy, either due to an accident and major alteration, something like that.
Okay. Um, is there anything else? So you said an accident or a major alteration. I mean that sounds like airplanes are really cheap to maintain. As long as I don't crash it or cut a hole in the side, the airworthiness certificate's good, right?
Well, that's not the only thing. I mean, also if you had, there's certain equipment that's required um, per 91205, depending on the type of operation. And if, say, okay, so let's say my tachometer is not working. That's specified in 91205. My airplane's not airworthy right now until that gets fixed.
Okay, well that's a great example. Let's say I come up to this thing and it's missing a couple static wicks. Is it airworthy?
It's missing a couple static wicks. I'm
Yeah.
not familiar.
Okay, what regs would you check? First of all, what regulation kind of governs what equipment can be missing?
I just meant I'm not familiar with a
Oh,
static wick, like what that
oh,
is.
you're not familiar with what a static wick is.
No.
Well, this thing's got a G1000 in it. Damn. It's got standbys, right? Like
Standby
standby,
meaning,
it's like backup instruments.
yeah, it has a G5 in addition to
Okay.
the G3X.
Okay. So if that G5's dead, is the aircraft airworthy?
Well, the G5 is a backup. I still have an attitude indicator. I still have.
Is the attitude indicator a required piece of equipment? Oh, I guess I should
Not
check
for
that.
VFR per
Awesome.
91205. Um, However, and I'm not certain on this, it might be in my KOEL in the
Okay.
POH, but I would have to consult that before taking the airplane up.
Okay. Is there anything else that you might want to consult if you were concerned about a piece of inoperative equipment?
Yep, because it might be required due to an airworthiness directive. There's 91205, obviously, which goes over day and night, all your different qualifications. Um, Airworthiness directives 91205. My airplane and my flight school does not have an MEL, but there is it's what's essentially a KOEL in
Yep.
my POH, and I would want to consult that as well.
Awesome. Awesome. That's really it. I mean, it's technically there's like a type certificate data sheet, and STCs can also be another place to look. But most of these this is a brand new airplane. It ain't got no damn STCs, and if it does, it's probably not required for airworthiness, right? So let's say, I don't know, somebody screwed up and snapped the wing off of this thing. What do I got to do with that airworthiness certificate?
Well, it's not valid
Okay,
right
so can
now.
it sit in the aircraft?
I would have to consult my FAR aim for that one.
I'm
But
just
I would imagine it could not or it should not because the aircraft is not airworthy. And that
that's
by having that document, it says the aircraft is airworthy.
so. Yep.
So,
What I always do is I just pull it out, and put it in the maintenance book.
gotcha.
Just pull it out, put it in the maintenance book, so that when the mechanic's done with the maintenance, he knows to put it back. Um, all right, registration, that's state by state and federal level, right? Operator's handbook. You sent me a digital POH. Am I good to go fly your airplane with that POH?
Well, not that one because it doesn't have the aircraft serial number or anything on it. It's
Yep,
not, it's not the POH for that airplane.
awesome. And you said weight and balance. Is that the weight and balance that like me and you do to make sure that the aircraft's within its appropriate CG, or what is that?
Nope. That is the one that was calculated by the factory, um, where they tell you everything about it.
Okay.
Sometimes it's in the POH. In my case, it's actually not. If you look in the weight and balance section of the POH, there is the basic empty weight that's not shown as like the real basic empty weight. So it's the weight and balance as it's equipped, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yep. So
It's a really long-winded way to go about it, but
yeah, so you want the weight and balance of how the aircraft was actually like either weighed or calculated, right?
right.
So, obviously there's a couple other things that need to be done with the aircraft to make sure that it maintains its airworthiness, right? We can't just like send it, be like, as long as it's not broken, it's airworthy, right? We got to get a couple inspections done. You know what inspections are required? And I know you're going to want to say the mnemonic. Keep the mnemonics in your head on the Checkride, all right?
Got
I
it.
I don't know
So
why, but that's a huge pet peeve for DPEs.
interesting. That's good to know because I was definitely thinking of the mnemonic. Um, so to make sure we were on inspections.
Yep.
So first thing I want to do is make sure there's no outstanding airworthiness directives. That is my job as pilot in command. There's also an annual inspection. That's every 12 calendar months. A VOR inspection, which is not required for VFR flight, but that would be every 30 days. Um, there's a 100-hour inspection if the airplane is operated for hire, which mine is. Um, there would be an altimeter inspection every 24 calendar months, a transponder inspection every 24 calendar months, an ELT inspection every 12, and static system every 24 calendar months.
Oh, that's a different way to write out that acronym. Uh, awesome. So let's say you get to the airplane and you notice the ELT is on. Can you just turn that ELT off and call it a day?
Well, the ELT's on, meaning, well, I would want to check and make sure the battery's not below 50% because it might be.
Okay. What's the other caveat on that ELT battery situation?
It also cannot be used for more than one cumulative hour.
Or an undetermined amount of time?
That's true. Yes,
Yep. Because it
because
says
I
you can't.
can't verify that.
Exactly. I mean, I guess if you want to go dig up like live ATC net, liveatc.net, and like look at 121.5 in your area. But again, like there's not really a whole. You might have a fancier ELT than I do that like does the GPS thing and actually has like a data logger and stuff, so you might be able to track down exactly how long it's been on. Um, the ELT in my airplane, no, like it's no.
You got to change
uh,
the battery if you're
yep,
not sure.
yep. All right, awesome. So you said for hire, that 100 hour is only needs to be done for hire. Let's say you own your own airplane, you're letting some buddies rent it and stuff, so you got to get that 100-hour inspection done. You get your annual done at 94 hours. Do you need to get another 100-hour inspection done in 6 hours?
The annual can take the place of the 100-hour.
Awesome. But what about the other direction?
No, because the annual's more thorough than the
Yep.
100-hour.
Yep. Awesome. Awesome.
Which I probably shouldn't be volunteering on a Checkride. I should probably just say yes or no and leave it at that. But
Um, yeah, yeah, that's definitely the better way to go about it is just answer the question. Do you know what time it is? Yes. All right.
got it.
That is the response to do you know what time it is, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about it. This is part of the questions that you were struggling with on the written. What are some of the key elements that you must cover in a passenger safety briefing?
Well, I must cover the use of seatbelts, no smoking. I'm going back to my safety checklist. Um, yeah, seatbelts, no smoking, emergency equipment, evacuation procedures. Normally, I have the safety checklist up when I'm doing this briefing, so I do not have it committed to memory. I pull it up on my iPad and I just kind of reference it so
All
that I
right.
don't miss anything. Um,
Well, I mean, think about what a flight attendant covers. What does a flight attendant cover when you go on a commercial flight? It's all the same things. Like that. Those are federally mandated. You said you use that safety acronym. It's seats, seatbelts, air vents, fire extinguishers, emergency exits. No talking during critical phases of flight. What are your questions? Obviously, if you've got an aircraft that's got some kind of pressurization system or oxygen system or life jackets, then you're going to discuss the usage of those. Like me and my seaplane, I'm like, hey, there's life jackets behind the rear seats. Your seat can also be used as a flotation device. It's just little things to add in there, right? Um,
right, like in my airplane, I would discuss the parachute because it has one.
exactly, right? It'd be real shitty for like, bird strike to happen and then the pilot dies and the passenger's over there like, oh, well, guess I'm dead too, even though it's got a
That would be
parachute,
bad.
right?
Right.
Okay. Um, so another one was weight and balance, right? Do we need to perform a weight and balance calculation for every flight?
You absolutely should.
Okay, but is it a requirement?
Yeah, I believe it is. Actually, I think you have
So
to.
you must be familiar with the weight and balance of this aircraft. Do you think I do weight and balance calculations every time I get into my airplane with the exact same amount of gas and the exact same people and the exact same equipment? No, it's my
You know,
personal
it's good that
aircraft.
it's good that you brought up the familiar because you know it because you've done it before, but you don't have to do it each time. Got it.
Exactly. But when I pack the airplane for like going camping for a week, obviously I'm going to do some weight and balance. Now, my airplane has the biggest CG range I've seen in any general aviation airplane ever. So it's usually not a concern, but you know, you need to be familiar with the weight and balance limitations of the aircraft, right? So let's say that we've got a CG that's too far forward. What would be some of my concerns?
Well, my CG is too far forward. I'm gonna have essentially. I'm gonna have trouble picking the nose up. It's
Okay.
gonna want to stay nose low. Um, it's gonna be easier to recover from a stalled condition,
Okay.
but your fuel economy is not going to be as good. Um, you're going to have trouble climbing out potentially. You're going to have trouble flaring. potentially. Yeah, the nose is going to want to stay down.
Okay. Would that
It's going to
impact?
take,
Go ahead.
well, it's going to take more. You're going to need to exert more force on the controls, either via trim or just pulling back on the controls to get the same result that you would want in level flight.
Okay. Now let's think about trying to leave the ground, right? So you said it's going to suck to climb. It's going to be more difficult to climb, right? Um, any other performance issues that we might see a concern, might have a concern with the CG being too far forward?
Well, well, you kind of gave me a cookie there with leaving the ground.
Yeah, a little
Um,
bit. Don't expect them to
you're
be that easy from the DPE.
right. You're probably gonna have trouble getting over, say, an obstacle.
Well, your
Um,
takeoff roll is going to be extended.
the whole takeoff roll, not just the clearance of an obstacle. Okay.
Not just the clearance of an obstacle. Because let's think about, what does the tail do, right? What does the tail do?
I mean, it controls our blah, 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 what's that called? It controls pitch.
Well, yeah, it controls pitch, right? So is the tail going to, does the tail generate lift or downforce?
The tail generates downforce
Yes. So it
or
generates,
or up force, depending on how you're pushing it. But yeah, downforce.
yeah. So the tail normally generates, like, in cruise and normal configuration, normal situations, it's going to generate a downforce, especially if it's trimmed appropriately, right? So if I've got a really heavy nose, what's that tail going to have to do? It's going to have to generate more downforce. Well, when a lifting surface generates more of a force, whether it be up or down, it generates more what? We've got two types of these. One of them's based on like skin and things sticking out of the airplane. The other one's based
No,
on,
drag.
yeah. So I'm going to
It's
generate
going to
more
generate more induced drag.
because the CG is too far forward. The tail has to work harder to get the nose up, generating more drag, burning off or requiring more kinetic energy or more conversion of chemical energy into kinetic energy, in the action of burning gas, right? It's going to require more thrust to overcome the drag that you are generating just to try and pick the nose up. Make sense?
It does. I never would have thought of that, but that makes
Um,
sense.
Now, what about rearward CG? What are some of the benefits of rearward CG? We were talking about shitty things this entire time. What are some of the benefits of rearward CG, though?
Well, if you have a rearward CG, you're probably going to get better fuel economy.
Right?
Um,
Do you understand why on that one?
well, because your airplane's gonna have it's gonna be attacking the wind better. Is that what it is? You're gonna get more air under the wings.
It's not
Yeah, not
necessarily
not
air
fully.
under, it's not air under the wings. It's the same idea on what the tail's doing, right? The tail generates downforce. If your CG is real far forward, again, the tail has to work harder to pick that nose up. Have you've flown airplanes when you start putting, well, in this thing you don't have a whole lot of weight to play with this, right? Um, but do your seat tracks move, or does this thing not even have adjustable
It
seats?
does. It
It
does not
doesn't.
have seat tracks. It has you move the rudders forward or
Okay.
aft.
Okay. That's hilarious. But like, you've flown a
Yeah.
Cessna and you've experienced the seat track moving, right?
Yes, I
So
have.
did your instructor do that little demonstration with you where, he moved his seat back and the airplane went, woo?
No,
No? Okay.
no, we never did that.
When you move the CG back, right, the airplane wants to pitch up because it's trimmed for the CG where it's currently at. So you can get rid of some of that trim, get rid of some of that force that tail needs to do, get rid of some of that effort that tail needs to make, giving you less drag. Less drag equates to less thrust. Less thrust required. Less thrust required means less fuel burned, better fuel economy.
Got it.
Awesome. Awesome. Some of the other stuff that you struggled with a little bit, NTSB accident and incident reporting. Um, when do you got to tell the NTSB about anything?
Well, if you have a serious accident, um, if you have like an in-flight fire, it all pertains to NTSB Part 803.
Okay, so you
It's
know
a
where to
big,
find it.
yeah, it's a big regulation. I don't know it fully, but Part
Awesome.
803.
You know where to find it. Nobody knows. Nobody knows exactly when, but like if your airplane gets dented or dinged or something happens, you know where to find it.
Yes, if
That's
something
really
happened, I
important.
would.
Like, plus my insurance agent would probably tell me too, right? And your insurance would probably tell you, be like, "Hey, man, you probably need to go call the NTSB."
Yes,
All right. Um, it said ground-based navigation, so I'm assuming. Did you have like an ADF question, or was this about VORs?
I had a VOR question,
Okay,
which was just a foreign concept to me at that point in my training. It wasn't something I had much experience with. I think it was like the from to indication or something.
oh yeah, that's rough, especially because you got so much experience in oh, I'm sorry about that. In glass cockpit, right? So the question I dug up is like to use a VOR navigation, or sorry, so how do you use a VOR for navigation? That was a question that I brought up. Like, talk me through the steps on what you would do to use a VOR for navigation. And I'm not necessarily saying like, how you're going to track the radial and bracketing and stuff. Just what would you do inside your airplane to verify that you are picking up the appropriate signal and all that?
Okay, sure. So I would, obviously the first step would be to identify a VOR that I want to find or want to track to. So I'm going to look at my sectional chart, pull up I don't know, the Robbinsville VOR, let's say. Um, I'm going to find its Morse code identifier and the channel, to tune to on my nav
Frequency.
screen
It's a
or the
frequency.
frequency.
Channel is military. They're only on Vortex, not VORs. All right.
Gotcha. I've been
I
using
know
those terms.
you want to use them interchangeably, but it's not, right? It's like think of it as like Sirius XM and FM radio, right? Sirius XM has channels. You can't tune in a Sirius XM channel on your FM radio.
That's a good point.
All right. So continue on.
So I'd find my frequency, and then I would, punch it into making sure I'm within the distance. Typically in a low altitude VOR, it's about 25 miles. As long as you have line of sight, it can vary with altitude and stuff like that. But assuming you have all of those things, and assuming you can get the signal, um, you're going to want to listen to the Morse code that it plays. So you're going to put it in the audio mode, and you're going to listen to that, and then you're going to compare it to what is on your chart and make sure that the Morse code identifier is the same. Excuse me. Um, make sure that it's the same and that we're not tracking, some other VOR that's going to take us to the wrong place. Um, and then I'm going to switch uh, my OBS to nav mode, or rather to VOR mode, out of GPS into VOR. And then I'm just going to chase the needle. So if the needle's deflecting one way, I'm going to fly toward it until they're lined up.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, I wouldn't necessarily dig too much into the, line of sight, whether or not I got the signal or and service volume and all that jazz, because you're not instrument rated, all right. Um, and you're not really going in for an instrument rating. That's starting to dig into that little bit of an instrument knowledge, and then it opens up the door for another question. Well, where would you find the information on that VOR to tell you like its range and its usable radials based on range.
That's a good point. I wasn't sure how deep you wanted me to go with it, so I kind of just told you everything I knew.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's why we're doing this, right? It's not about, shaming you. It's saying like, hey, let's reel this answer in just a little bit. Unless you've got the follow-up question, which is, well, how do you know? Where do you find that information?
I have no idea.
It's going to be in the AFD. What do they call them now? Chart supplements. So you
That's
said,
wow.
yeah,
I
you
didn't
said,
know that was in the chart supplement.
Yeah, so you said Robinson VOR, right? What's the closest airport to Robinson VOR? Would it be
Robbinsville would
the
probably
oh,
be Trenton.
so if you look at the Trenton chart supplement, that's probably where you're going to find that VOR's information.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now, would I ask that on a private pilot exam? No, unless they brought it up.
It's very true.
All
So
right.
don't bring it up.
Yeah, he may still ask, and I'd look in the airport's facility diagram for the closest airport to that VOR, and that's going to give you that's pretty much going to give you the information you need. And when I say closest, I'm not necessarily saying like if there's a podunk, private airport nearby. Obviously, that's not the one you're going to look at, right?
Right.
So now let's talk about how to actually use that VOR. So you said, you're going to point towards the needle. Let's say you were trying to track from VOR to VOR or from a VOR to an airport because you're flying over the desert and there's no there's no ground references to make sure that you're on course. Right? How would you
Yeah.
do that?
Well, I would want to choose a radial off of that VOR that is going to take me to where I would like to go. I guess would be the
Right?
simplest way
So
to put that.
so what would we expect to see in the way of that to from indication? If I am trying to fly away from the VOR, let's say the airport is immediately south of this VOR. So I am
So,
flying south. So what
well, if I'm
radial?
flying, I would want, so I'm flying immediately south, assuming it's lined up, I would expect the 180 radial from the VOR.
Awesome. Now, what would be, just to make sure I'm just going to ask one that seems like a stupid question, but just to make sure that you've got a full understanding, where would you point the head of the needle of the CDI?
Where would I point the head of
Yeah,
the
like what
needle?
heading? What 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 number would be above the head of the needle of your CDI? Because that's the radial you're selecting.
Well, if I'm on the 180 from, that I'd want 180. It would
Awesome.
show a from indication.
Awesome. How do you get to that? What are you going to put in to get to that VOR from that same airport now? You're still on the 180 radial, but what are you going to put at the head of that needle?
I would put a 360
And what?
too.
Awesome. So you understand it now.
I do.
Awesome. Um, now, not necessarily. This question is not necessarily in reference to VORs, but you're on a cross country or you're flying along. How do you correct for wind?
Well, you would. I mean, it sounds. And my airplane actually gives you a wind correction dot,
Awesome.
but essentially you want to point. So if I have like a wind coming, if I want to fly straight, and I have a wind coming right to left, then I got to point my nose into that wind to keep going straight.
Awesome. That's really it. You need a crab angle, right?
Yes.
Um, so you've got 80 horsepower in your airplane. That's not much, right?
No, it is not.
It's not much. Technically, the POH says a maximum altitude of 18,000 feet. What would you expect as you continue to climb up to that mythical 18,000 feet?
Well, I'm probably not going to get there, but if I do, it's going to get slower and slower.
Okay, so how would you say altitude affects the performance of an aircraft?
Well, the higher I get, the worse my performance is going to be.
All right, so we're taking off of an airport. You just left, you know, Tucson, Arizona, which is at like 500 feet AGL, or not AGL, MSL, and you went up to Sedona, which is at like 7,000 feet MSL. what would you expect in the way of, do you think that you could take the same gas, same people, same, everything from Tucson early morning and Sedona middle of the day, sun beating down, it's 110 degrees outside?
No.
Awesome. Awesome. So what would you do to make sure? Because, right, you did your performance calculations on the ground before you ever took off to make sure that, you're good. What do you think would be a good idea once you get to Sedona?
Well, I'm gonna want to redo those based on the conditions that I'm now taking off in.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'm still digging into the stuff that you missed on your written. So, we talked about that. Talked about, we're not talking about that yet. So, tell me, if I am banking, right? Or, oh, here, tell me about adverse yaw. What can you tell me about adverse yaw? What causes it? How do I correct for it? What are some of the features on an aircraft that might try to negate it?
Well, adverse yaw is a result of induced drag.
Okay.
Um, so if I'm in a turn and I'm making a left turn, so my right wing is generating more lift than my left wing. Did I say I'm making a right turn or a left turn? I don't know.
You
But anyway,
start making a left turn. Either way,
so
the
I'm making a
the
left turn. My right wing's higher, meaning it's generating more lift than my left wing right now. And because of that, it's also the induced drag on that wing is higher because the lift is higher, and or induced drag goes up with lift. So the more you have one, the more you have the other.
all right.
That greater induced drag is wanting to pull my nose in the direction of that greater induced drag. So it's going to want to pull my nose to the outside of the turn.
Okay. So how do you correct for that?
I would add rudder.
All right.
So
Is there any aircraft features or anything that can be done with some of the control surfaces, any type of control surfaces that might help negate some of that adverse yaw?
I'll be honest with you. I know there is such thing as a yaw damper. I've never flown an airplane with one, so I'm not familiar with how it works.
So a yaw damper isn't the same thing. You can think of a yaw damper kind of as just kind of as auto rudder. I know that's not what it is, but at this point in your training, think of it as that. It's trying to cancel out any unintended yaw, right? So it's canceling out adverse yaw. I'm still talking about general aviation. Have you ever heard of a freestyle aileron?
I have not.
Okay, so freestyle aileron, they're just mounted at kind of like an off angle, so that when you deflect one down, the other one goes up higher to try and generate the same amount of drag, right? So here we've got our fun little airplane. So you said we're turning to the left, so we dropped this aileron down to generate lift, right? Induce drag. Well, they said, well, what if we just kind of off center mount this aileron, because they're tied together, so they're going to move, they're going to move with each other. So if I make this one jut up real higher and work kind of like a speed brake, it's going to try and bring it along with it.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
All right. I don't think your aircraft has them. I think some Pipers have them. Some Cessnas have them. But yeah, I don't think yours has them. Right.
Mine
Um.
does not. Mine has a flapper on, so it's a single piece rudder and or correction, flap and aileron.
Yep. Yep. All right. We talked about how to track radials. We talked about crosswind corrections. Oh, okay. So, how do your flaperons, when you drop them down as flaps, how do they impact the? What is it? Explain how flaps. That's what I've got written down. Explain how flaps affect lift and drag.
Well, flaps allow the wing to generate more lift at a slower airspeed
Okay. So
by
that,
changing the camber of the wing.
yeah, by Also moves the chord line, right?
That's what it is. It moves the chord line lower. So
So it moves the rear point of the chord line lower, causing more upper camber to build up in the wing. But when I do that, what else happens? So I'm here at this speed, or I'm here at this attitude at insert appropriate speed. Here's my chord line. I drop my flaps. What happened?
will you also increase drag on the airplane?
I increase drag, but so I'm flying along, I've got some wind coming at me, right? I've got that relative wind. Well, here's my chord line, here's the relative wind coming at me. What else did I increase?
You increased your angle of attack.
Angle of attack. So I'm also generating I can generate more lift. Did I generate enough lift to counteract the drag? Most likely not, right? Um so they do a number of things. You touched on most of them, right? They help increase drag, or they help with drag. They help increase lift. They help increase lift at lower air speeds. They also increase our angle of attack. So you flew a Cessna 172, right?
Yep.
So when you added that first notch of flaps, your instructor probably said catch the balloon,
Mm-hmm.
something along those lines. That's
Yep.
that angle of attack increase. The airplane, for lack of a better way to put it, pitched up based on the wing, based on the angle of attack, because that's really all airplanes know is angle of attack. They don't know airspeed, they don't know temperature, they know angle of attack and how much it weighs, right? So if I change the shape of the wing in such a way that it increases its angle of attack, it's gonna try to lift. That's why it would lift and not necessarily pitch, right?
I'd never thought of it like that. But yeah.
That's why it's a balloon and not a pitching moment. It's catch the balloon, not catch the pitch, right?
Right, because you can feel the airplane just move up like from your seat.
Like an elevator.
Yes.
Yep. Because you have increased the angle of attack. And that's also a cool little trick that you can do if you catch yourself in a box canyon, is add a little bit of flaps. Because now you are increasing how much lift the wing can generate without bleeding off a whole lot of airspeed and without asking for work from the tail.
Okay.
All right. Now, of course, that is not a fully inclusive mountain flying course. Go get real training on the subject. Okay. And this is
Will do.
This is recorded, so when the NTSB knocks on my door, I can go. Nah, look, I told him. All right.
Yes. Noted.
All right. Now, last little emergency. Again, this, for some reason, I've got this in your little list of like questions missed. So what are some immediate actions you would take if you had an engine failure in flight?
Well, first thing I would do is I want to get my airspeed. So I want to pitch for my best pitch and trim for best glide and locate a place to land. Like that's immediate. Um, Once I have that, I'm going to start my checklists.
Now,
Um,
is there any immediate action items that you might want to take into account? Or do you guys not teach immediate action items?
the immediate action items that I went over were what I've been taught.
Okay, so
It's
but no
it's
systems related.
airspeed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you've learned the ABCs.
essentially, yeah.
ABC,
Airspeed,
best
best
place to land.
glide. Yeah, well, yeah, airspeed. I always think best glide, but yeah, best
Airspeed.
glide is your airspeed, and then best place to land immediately. And then you start your checklists,
Yep.
which are from memory, but yeah.
Yeah, that'll work. I the only reason I harp on memory items is kind of a concurrent action along with slowing the airplane down, because like let's be honest, the thing's got electric trim. If you need all of your faculties to get the airplane to slow down to 69 knots, we got other things to worry about. All right.
Right.
So the only reason I harp on it is because I had an engine failure at like 80 feet. and I got the
Oh
engine
Jesus.
back momentarily enough for me to clear the trees.
Oh my God.
All
That's
right.
terrifying.
So that's the only reason I bring it up, because it's like, yo, get some memory items in. If you need all your faculties to get yourself to best glide, get some better faculties. Because again, your aircraft has electric trim. A lot of these airplanes are super simple in the way of getting them to slow down, right? So it doesn't take much to also slap the throttles and slap your fuel shut off and flip the fuel pump on. Does it?
No,
It
it
doesn't,
would take a
right?
second or two,
It,
and I could do it with one hand.
exactly. So not necessarily saying you got it wrong. I'm just saying keep that in mind, because nobody ever plans for an engine failure. Believe me, I sure as shit didn't.
It's very true.
All right. Um, yeah, those trees get big real quick. Um,
Fuck, I can imagine.
yeah, and it was like a 1,200-foot runway too, and like a 140 horsepower plane with two people in it and full gas in the middle of summer in Texas. Yeah, there was so much going wrong.
Oh Jesus.
Um, so all right, I'm happy with that. Now let's talk about your privileges and limitations. You're gonna go get your private pilot certificate. Congratulations, right? What can you do now?
Well, I can carry passengers. I can act. Well, I can. I should say I can act as PIC with passengers. I guess would be the proper way to put that. Um, I can tow gliders or unpowered ultralight vehicles. I
Now,
can.
right now, like you take your check
Well,
ride and there's a job out there, tow gliders. Are you good to go?
no. I would have to get the requisite training and endorsements and hour requirements, but that is something a private pilot can do.
Yep, awesome.
Um, and kind of going off of that, I can also, if I were an aircraft salesman, which I'm not, but if I were, I could demonstrate um, an aircraft to a prospective buyer. I would need 200 hours to do that, but I could. I can fly for a charity or a nonprofit, and I can aid in, I think they call it search and rescue type operations, like a Civil Air Patrol type role.
Okay. Now, let's say I'm going to use up here in Wisconsin for an example. Somebody's out there ice fishing when they shouldn't be. Piece of ice broke off. They're out floating around in Lake Michigan. Somebody needs to go find them. And you're just like, man, I'm going to pull a Batman move and I'm going to go take my airplane and I'm going to go find them. And then I'm going to send a bill to the fire department for the gas. Is that okay? Is that what that
Would that be okay?
yeah, is that what where that whole search and rescue operations, does
Well,
that
no,
fall within that? Okay, so what's the
because that's
requirement?
more. I'd have to be working for an organization
It's
that's
not
doing
even
that, or I'd have to do it for free. Let's
it's
say
it's not even necessarily working for an organization. It just has to be sanctioned. You just
sanctioned.
have
Okay,
to actually get the permission to do it. You can't just like, "Oh, y'all need help? All right, I'm going." Right?
got it.
That's really the sticking point, right? You can't just go aid in search and rescue and then send a bill to, whatever organization was doing the search and rescue.
Because
Um,
that sounds like more like a business at that point.
well,
You know.
and I mean it's still fair game, but think of it when, like, when you hear about like those murders, like a kid going missing or something like that, and then they have these like hands across the valley kind of, movements where they just have an asinine amount of people walking just looking for anything that might point towards where this kid went. So that's an event, right? That's a search and rescue event. But just because they are having a search and rescue event does not mean that you can just go hop in your airplane and aid in it. Even if you're part of the volunteer group that's in that search and aid rescue, you have to actually get the sanction to go get your airplane and like come to an agreement like, hey, yeah, we're going to give you gas to go aid in this search and rescue.
Got it. So it has to be like coordinated
Yes, it's
and
not just a
sanctioned and got it.
awesome. Now, you want to go, fly your buddies around, right? But it's been It's been about 3-4 months since you've flown last. What do you got to do before you can go take your buddies up?
Well, if it's been more than 90 days, I need to get current.
All right. What does that mean?
Well, that means if it's daytime, that means I need to do 3 takeoffs and landings in the same category and class of airplane. I have to do those solo before I can carry passengers within the preceding. Well, they have to be done within the preceding 90 days, I should
Do
say.
they have to be solo?
Well, I can't carry. Well, I suppose I could have a CFI
What about
with
me? I'm a
me, but
pilot.
that's.
Am I a passenger if I'm a pilot?
Are you a required crew member?
No. But I could still operate the aircraft, can't I?
Well, if you could operate the aircraft, then yes, that'd be okay. That'd be like a safety pilot type deal.
Awesome. So it's
Um,
not a matter of solo. There is a difference, right? Solo hours, and it's not what I'm getting at is that the requirement isn't solo. It's without
got it.
passengers. All right?
As
Cuz
long as I'm the one logging the PIC time as like the
exactly.
manipulator of controls. Got it.
Exactly. Cuz like think of it like airline pilots, if they well, never mind. They never lose currency. Forget that train of thought. Awesome. So, you go and get your 3 takeoffs and landings in a Cessna 172, but your buddy's got a Mooney. But he's not a pilot. He's got a rich buddy that decided to buy a Mooney, and now he wants you to go fly it with him. Is that a good idea?
That's a horrible idea. Unless
Yeah.
I'm familiar with it. Like,
So,
unless I'm proficient with that.
so there's a difference between currency and proficiency.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. Because technically, you know, I'm current to go fly a CRJ 200. Should I? Fuck no. Right?
Probably not.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Technically, based on your requirements that we've stated, I could go fly a CRJ 200. Technically not because it's a type rating and it's not just multi-engine. But either way, let's just think about it as multi-engine, right? Or even we think about like a Grumman Goose or something. Like, sure, technically, I'm current, but like, no, I'm not.
It's like me with a 172. Like, yeah, technically, I could. Not a great idea.
Nope, nope, nope. All right. Um, I'm happy with that. So, what do you need on you as a pilot to go legally fly?
I need. Was this? Is this as a student or is this as a private pilot?
As a private pilot.
As a private pilot, okay. So I need a government issued photo ID. I need my medical, and I need my pilot certificate,
Okay,
which in my case would be a private pilot certificate.
awesome. Now, for your check ride, what do you need on you?
Well, for my check ride, I'm still a student
You're gonna
flying
need
with
all
endorsements. So I need my, well, I would need all endorsements required to make my flight if they're required.
which
So even if I'm a private pilot, if I have a tailwheel aircraft and I have a tailwheel endorsement, I need that with me.
oh, I think that is correct, which kind of concerns me because I've been flying without. Well, I got a digital logbook. What am I kidding? Um, I always have my logbook on me. But now, I'm assuming you've probably got what a Jeppesen logbook or an ASA logbook or something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know who made it. Just
But
the little black pilot logbook. It's the real basic one.
yeah, so
Then I have a,
you've got a paper
yeah.
logbook, right? Um, is this a logbook?
Well, the FAA doesn't actually define what a logbook is.
Awesome, awesome. So what needs to go in a logbook?
Well, you would want I mean, you would need a way to organize your endorsements, um,
Not
or
ignore ignore the letters at this point. I'm just talking about in a general logbook. Like if you were to put stuff in a logbook, right? If you're putting flights in a logbook, what flights are required to be entered into that logbook?
gotcha. Sorry, I kind of misunderstood where you were going with that.
Yeah, you're fine.
Essentially, anything you would want to log anything that's either going toward a new rating, like training or currency, I guess would be the
Awesome.
two. Training
Training
and currency.
training and currency. Training and currency. That is it. All right. Um so what are some pre-flight considerations for nighttime? For nighttime flying?
Nighttime flying.
Yep.
Well, I would want to make sure that I was night current,
Well,
assuming I'm taking passengers. But
okay.
if I'm not, then that doesn't apply. Um, there are additional airworthiness requirements for my airplane at night. Um, me as a pilot, I want to make sure I felt comfortable flying at night. Going back to proficiency, I'd want to, try to get my eyes adjusted to
So,
flying at night.
about how long would you wait? You're saying get your eyes adjusted, right? About how long?
About a half hour. You want to be avoiding like real bright lights.
All right. And is there any kind of lighting that you could use to avoid losing that kind of night vision or that adjustment? Any specific
Red light.
color? Awesome. All right. Um, Now you're flying around at night. Is there any way, it's an overcast night, right? And you're flying out in the middle of nowhere, so there's no ground references, there's no lights, there's nothing. You can't see the stars because it's a super thick overcast layer. How would you know if you entered the clouds?
How would I know if I entered the clouds? And I can't see anything.
You're
Just
you're
I'm
already
having
going there.
trouble. Right. Well, I could. I've never been asked a question like that.
So
So this is good.
have you ever
I could.
have you ever turned your high beams on when it's foggy outside?
I have. Yeah.
So what does it do to you?
It makes it harder to see.
Okay, so do you got some lights on the outside of this airplane that get really bright momentarily?
Yeah, like my landing light,
Or your
my
strobes?
strobes.
So you're going to punch through that cloud and you are immediately going to be blinded by your strobe lights.
Oh, okay.
It's going to scare the shit out of you because well, I mean, it scared me. Because you don't plan for it. And next thing you know, flash, 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 flash. Like, oh, we're getting shot at. We're going down.
Right.
Right. So that's how you'd know, right? You punch into that cloud, your strobes are going to reflect right back at you. Okay. Um, awesome. So what's the difference between a SIGMET and an AirMet?
Um, SIGMETs are, I mean, in general, they're typically more severe. They're hazardous to all aircraft.
So
Um,
awesome.
just a bigger deal than an airmet. I suppose it's more severe. It's more urgent.
So it's a SIGMET stands for significant meteorological information, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if there's a tornado, well, no, not a tornado. Um, if if there's thunderstorms, am I going to get a SIGMET, or is there
You
something else?
may.
Well, is there something else that covers specifically thunderstorms or that kind of activity?
Well, there'd be a convective SIGMET
Awesome.
that
So
would
what's
cover that.
awesome? Um, let's talk about right of way. You and a glider are about to impact each other. You're just head on. Who needs to move?
Well, if there's a head-on, I mean, we should both move to the right, but the glider does have right of way over me.
Awesome, awesome. So don't ever assume that they're gonna go right, right? You take your right
Right.
turn. You take your right turn, but I mean gliders, they're squirrely little fuckers. All right, because they're trying to maintain lift. They're trying to stay in the air. They don't have options like thrust, right?
Right.
Um. Okay. Now, what about a helicopter? You and a helicopter are about to smack into each other. Who's got right away?
Well, I'd say the helicopter does.
Why would a helicopter have right of way?
You know what? Actually, I would probably have right away because I'm more maneuverable, or he's more maneuverable than me.
Yep, helicopters can stop,
Yeah,
right?
it has to
Helicopters.
do with maneuverability. I just wasn't thinking.
Yep, that's fine. That's fine. And here's a perfect part. Here's a perfect time to take a kind of like a recollection of what's currently happening inside your noggin, right? I've been asking you question after question after question after. You're tired, aren't you?
A little bit.
Recognize that on your check ride. Hey, do you mind if we take a break? Let me get some water. No DPE will stop you from getting water and taking a break.
I'm definitely
Recognize.
going to keep that one in the back of my mind.
All right. Recognize that. All right. Most of the stuff you're pretty good. Your systems were a little weak, but everything else you've been pretty spot on. Just little corrections, and then digging a little deeper. Um, are you comfortable with charts? I mean, I can pull up SkyVector and ask you a bunch of weird questions on SkyVector real quick.
That would be good,
All right.
actually. I've hammered on charts with my instructor because that was a weak point for me for a while. But um, yeah, that'd be good.
All right. Can you see this?
Yeah, let me see.
I
Gotta
mean, you
click
can't
on it.
like
Yeah,
read. Yeah. So what's this? What's this black thing?
bro, you picked an airport that I've flown into. That's a
Oh,
Tersa.
okay.
That's Scranton Wilkes.
Okay.
AVP.
That was literally like I just opened up SkyVector. I was like, oh look, there's a good question.
Oh, I did my long cross country there.
Okay, so you are well aware of what tersas are. What's
Oh, that's
this?
funny.
What's this star mean?
That star means that there is an airport beacon.
Awesome. What's this anchor?
That's a seaplane base.
Yeah, probably not, but it's charted.
It's charted as one, yes.
I have tried to go to so many seaplane bases that just don't exist. All right. Um, what's this? This little dot with the dashes or with the circle with the dots around it and whatnot.
That's a DME.
Awesome. Why is this one empty?
That is empty because it is grass, or it's
No,
non-hard surface, I
it's a
should say.
non-hard surface. Awesome. Um, let's see. What's some more good ones? Oh, is this one still here? It's probably not there anymore. Um, now, there's this restricted airspace.
Yep.
How would I know what altitude that restricted airspace is?
Well, there would be on on your paper sectional or in ForeFlight, you could bring up your layers. You would reference that number, so that R 2308B.
Okay.
Um, you would find that. don't know exactly what it's called, but it is on your it's on your sectional. And then
So
you would look at the times where it's active and who owns that airspace and all that.
awesome, awesome, awesome. Why is this dashed? This blue dashing right here.
You know, I've never seen that before,
Sometimes water.
but sometimes water. Okay, good to know.
Sometimes water. Right? Just like here too. Sometimes water. You usually
That's
only
just
see
like a
it.
low-lying
Uh,
area.
usually only see it in Arizona. I mean, this is a lake, supposedly, Lake St. Clair,
Hmm,
but apparently it goes dry periodically.
interesting. I've never seen that.
Well, I mean, Arizona, right? Like think of it. It's um, water goes, it goes dry there all the time. All right. What are these?
Those are Victor Airways.
Are they? Let's get a little closer to them. Have you ever seen a Victor Airway that's VR?
No, you're right.
And
You're
like,
right.
that's like pointing at a mountain.
That looks like well, it's inside. It's they all converge at a MOA. It could be a military training route.
That's exactly what it is. It's a military visual training route. Can you use these as like reference or like let's say I'm doing a cross country down to somewhere in Mexico, whatever. Um, and I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna get on. The military uses these as a visual training route. I can use them as a visual route, so I'm gonna go to this mountain, then that mountain, and then I'm gonna go to this little mountain over here with the farm and the river. I'm gonna follow this visual route. Like, is that a safe thing to do?
I mean, legally you could. I don't see why not, but no, that's a horrible idea
Why?
because there's going to be a lot of traffic on that route,
So I
and
wouldn't
it's going to
ever
be military traffic.
you run the risk of people above 250 knots below 10,000 feet, right? So technically, they're not supposed to be breaking the sound barrier. Technically, okay.
They might be.
But in the strange haps that they do, you got to remember when the Concorde started doing flights, across the states, they were shattering windows 20,000 feet below them. Oh, because of the
Mm,
sonic boom. Imagine you and your little Cessna or your Skycatcher or what is this, the Pipistrel. Um,
yeah.
imagine catching a sonic boom from an F-18 because you were like, I'm gonna follow these mountains. I'll be good to go, right? Don't follow them. Do not.
Yeah, that'd be a bad idea.
All right. Um, what's this?
That
Circle?
is a oh, the circle. I thought you were
Well, not
pointing to the
not the
flag.
circle. No. Well, we'll talk about the flag in a second. The yeah, the squiggly line with the dots.
Kind of looks like a wildlife refuge.
That's exactly what it is. Is there any requirements associated with wildlife refuge?
No requirements, but you should stay above 2000, well, 2000 AGL or greater.
Awesome. Leave the birds alone. What about a MOA? Am I cleared to just enter this MOA?
And a MOA.
Yep, military operation area. I'm
I
going
mean, you
from Childs right over here. Like that's my home airport. And I'm trying to go to Tucson because I got a buddy here and we're gonna go to like a sports game or something. I don't know.
you can. It's not a good
Um,
idea.
it's not even necessarily a bad idea, but just be wary of the fact that there could be military aircraft in there, right? I fly through MOAs all the time. Here, when I did my cross countries, like all of my private pilot cross countries, I spent 90% of it in this damn MOA over here.
Oh, geez.
I never saw nobody.
Wow.
All
But they
right.
could be there.
They could be there, yes. Well, actually, no, I saw a couple A10s.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was kind of
Kind of
cool.
jealous.
You're just kind of buzzing around in your Cessna, and next thing you know, fuck it, just a team of A-10s, right? Um, what is this airspace right here? The dashes. It's a shitty one. Sorry. Let me find a better one. This one.
The blue dashes is a class Delta.
All right. What's this minus mean?
That means up to, but not including
Awesome.
4,200.
Awesome. So I take off from Casa Grande, right? You see the airport right here, Casa Grande?
Yep.
All right. If you ever fly in Arizona, don't hang out here. Okay. There's a bunch of airplanes stacked up 500 feet on top of each other.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So Casa Grande, right? I'm here in Casa Grande, and I want to go to Cutter, San Carlos, right here. I want to go here. So I'm going to be cutting through this little sliver under the Bravo airspace. Okay? What equipment do
Okay.
I do what equipment do I need under this Bravo airspace?
Well, you need a operating mode C transponder.
Awesome. That's really at the extent
And
that I wanted. A lot of people think you only need the Mode C transponder inside the Mode C veil, but it also includes inside the lateral boundaries of a Class Bravo. That's why I bring this one up, because it's outside of the Mode C veil. Make sense?
yep.
All right. Um, there was one other thing. Oh yeah, the what are these? What's this little flag?
The flag, that's a VFR reporting point.
Awesome. If I wanted to put, hmm, where's it at? Oh, is it not? Oh, maybe it's on the IFR one. Sorry. I know there's a couple of them. Where'd it go? Trying to see if there's any other fun little doodads that. Ooh. Oh wait, no, that's not what I thought it was. That's not the zipper one, and I forget the zipper one anyway. You remember the zipper airspace? The one that's
What
depicted by
is,
the one that's depicted by the zipper airline, or the zipper lines, or did they get mixed up?
I'm not sure. Not sure what are you talking about, like an 8 is? Or
No, not the eight is, but the echo ones that are depicted weirdly. They must have got rid of them.
I think I know what you're talking about actually. I think they're off the coast usually. But
Oh yeah, do they still have them off the coast? Yeah. Well,
yeah.
these ones are easy because they're like they label them. But there's like a standard one, but it's fine. There's, as you could tell, very few of them left. Ooh, that's a good one. What's this?
That is the maximum elevation figure.
Is it the maximum elevation figure?
Or is it the, well, it's an MEF, so it's either minimum or maximum. But essentially what it is, because I might have the name wrong. But essentially, if you zoom out and you look at like those little quadrants of latitude and longitude,
Yep, I'm looking
that
at.
is the that is the highest point within that square, rounded up to the nearest hundred plus 300 feet.
Awesome. So it's the minimum obstruction clearance altitude.
That's the name for it. Minimum obstruction clearance altitude.
All right. Because there's the maximum. There's the maximum altitude. See.
I do,
Uh,
yeah.
all right. You got any questions for me? Because I mean, I feel like you're pretty Checkride ready. I'm gonna struggle to find clips in this one where you're not just getting the answers right. Um,
Well, that's actually that's a confidence builder, man.
Yeah, because like,
Because I don't know, like obviously, like I've done mock check rides and stuff with um a couple CFIs at my school and stuff, like who know me, but it's definitely reassuring, like a complete stranger to say that.
yeah, I mean,
Um,
the systems were a little weak, but again, it's a strange airplane. So if you've got an out of school DPE, I wouldn't stress too much on that. But yeah, I mean, that wasn't bad. I mean, you've seen the clips; they've been much worse. Like, I'm not trying to be a
Indeed, there
dick,
have.
but some of them, like, they need some help still. So I mean, if you were my student, I wouldn't have an issue signing you off to go take a check ride, and I've maintained above a 90% first try pass rate. So
Cool, man. I appreciate it. That's a big confidence boost, honestly.
yeah, I mean, as long as you know your weight and balance performance calculations, you should be fine.
Awesome. And
All
then
right.
just I guess weather, but
Well,
that's
I
coming
mean,
together.
well, let's dig into some weather. I'll open up a weather chart. Or what in weather? Are you worried about weather theory? Are you worried about reading weather services? Are you worried about how?
Um, I mean, I guess it would be more like prog charts and stuff. Kind of get me
Well,
the
here's the thing.
implications of one,
Here's the thing.
but
What do you mean by the implications? Like how to read them?
yeah, like if she asked me like how you're gonna like okay, like look at this chart and tell me like what it says. I mean, obviously I can tell you like oh that's a trough, oh that's a ridge, high pressure, low pressure, etc. Um, but in terms of making a go no go decision, I typically use the standard briefing, which has some of those charts in it, but I just kind of look at the totality of the briefing as opposed to harping on any one chart. And I'm not sure how she's gonna,
Well,
tackle that, but
okay, let's use this one for an example, right? So here's a prog chart, right? Fronts and pressures. If I was trying to fly from Arizona to Texas, what would I be concerned about as I kind of cross this region?
well, you're going from an area of high pressure to low pressure, and there's a trough in there too.
Okay, and what is that
Um,
associated with?
a trough is a significant drop in pressure.
Okay,
Um,
what kind of weather is that associated with? Would you feel comfortable just looking at this chart? Would you say, looking at this chart, that this long cross country plan should go? Or would you think I need to dig up more information?
I'd probably want to dig up more information
All right, it's a big picture, it's
on
a
that.
far out big picture idea. That's what they're used for. They're not used for I'm going today. They're used for do I need to call my buddy in Texas and say, "Hey, I'm probably going to have to push it back a day."
Gotcha. Okay. I was
All
a little
right?
hung up on the wrong thing then. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, right now, I don't want to be flying in California. I
No.
mean, there's like, do we really need to dig into that any farther? Right?
Probably windy as fuck and bad weather. I see a lot of converging fronts.
Exactly.
And I see the radar, it's doing stuff. Not
Yeah.
good.
So it's hey, based on what I'm seeing, it's really just a lot of judgment calls. Remember, we're not meteorologists. Sure, I took a high level meteorology class in college. Do I remember it? No. But I can look at this prog chart and go, huh, if I had to fly tomorrow, like if my plan was to fly tomorrow from Texas up here to Wisconsin, I'd probably push it a day. I'm seeing a lot of movement. I'm seeing a lot of weather happening real quick. I'm seeing a lot of low pressure. I'm seeing a lot of gradients. I'm seeing a lot of, because remember, frontal movement is associated with weather,
Right.
right? If I saw some high pressure that was just kind of hanging out over this time period, then I might make a different decision. But here's the thing, over a 24-hour time period, I am seeing insane movement. I ain't going nowhere.
It's true, because it's probably going to indicate rapidly changing,
Weather,
unpredictable conditions.
rapidly changing weather conditions, especially VFR. I'm not going. It'd be a dumb thing to do, right? Um, and at least in my experience, ensuring that you stay approachable, ensuring that you stay human, is a real easy way to make a check ride go better. If you keep just trying to be rigid with your answers, and especially when it comes to like go no go aeronautical decision making, it's kind of like writing an essay on yourself. Your English teacher can only judge your grammar. They can't judge your substance,
I see what you're saying.
right? If you read the chart just blatantly wrong, obviously they can be like, well, actually, that's not correct. But if you're sitting here going, but a day like this that we're watching, an asinine amount of movement and an asinine amount of change on the radar in a short period of time isn't a day that I'm interested in going flying.
That's
And it
true, because it's
doesn't
probably going
look,
to change a lot in flight,
yep. And
especially if it's a long flight.
I'm seeing rain, I'm seeing snow, I'm seeing a mix of ice in there, or mix of rain and snow, sorry. I mean, I'm not seeing any thunderstorms. And any DPE that tries to tell you you can't look at um a goddamn legend, just walk out. Just be done with the fucking check ride. Because there is no time in which you would ever have access to these charts in which you wouldn't have a legend associated with them.
I agree.
You can't get these charts, even if you get paper versions of them, you can't get them without a fucking legend.
It's like a sectional chart. It comes with the legend. You should be able to reference it. It's FAA, or, well, in this case, Aviation Weather Center.
Exactly.
Material. It's not like I pulled it out of my butt.
Exactly. Exactly. So I mean, you know, um let's just to be sure. Tell me what the weather's like right now in Chicago.
Okay. Winds are 130 at 6, 10 statute miles visibility. Clouds are few at 12,000 feet, scattered at 14,000, overcast 25. Your temperature's 5, dew point's -4, altimeter's 3012. Remarks, they have it's an automated system with a precipitation discriminator. Sea level pressure is 204 hectopascals, I believe. And then I think it's hectopascals. And then your temperature over there is,
Don't even worry
I
about
mean,
that.
it's,
What's the dollar
yeah, it's
sign at the end mean?
$sign at the end. Oh God, what does that mean? That means,
It means you got to spend money. There could be something wrong with this ATIS.
I was going to say there might be maintenance
Yeah, there's
requirements or
possible
something.
maintenance requirements, right? So, when's the wind going to get the worst with rain in Chicago?
The wind with rain. Well, it looks like it's that. It looks like it's on the 15th day of the month at 0900 Zulu.
Awesome,
That
awesome.
third line down.
Yep. Um, Now, when is the visibility supposed to drop?
The line right below it.
All
It's
right,
going to get
what
down to
times?
3 statute miles. From 0900 to 1200.
Awesome, awesome. What's that BR mean in that same line? So you got SHRA and BR.
It's missed.
All right. The way I remember it is baby rain, right?
Yep,
BR,
that's what I
baby
would.
rain. All right.
Must have watched the same video.
No, this is my instructor. My first instructor. I don't know. I'm not seeing any genuine concerns. I haven't, like, nothing that I have asked has been so blatantly wrong that, like, it's not necessarily been wrong. It's been like there like little gaps here and there, but it, we fixed them, and there's a much better understanding now. So, you got anything else?
No, man, I really appreciate it. This was big for the confidence and also just big to, fill in a couple gaps that were there.
Yeah, just read
Yeah,
through it,
man,
be
I really
alert.
appreciate it. Will do. It's going to be next couple days. I
Awesome.
think I can
All
get
right.
it.
All
Thanks,
right.
man. Appreciate it.